More on this, we're joined by Pierre KRÄHENBÜHL, who's the Commissioner General of UNRWA. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Tell us first off about the effect on your work in Gaza and the other territories that you're involved in of this cut by Donald Trump.
Well, the first effect was a very strong sense of anxiety among Palestine refugees. There are 5 million Palestine refugees in the Near East, of which 1.2 million are in the Gaza Strip alone. Now, focusing on Gaza, since you were mentioning it, here is a very small territory in which you have 2 million people living, again, 1.2 million of them being Palestine refugees. And it's a community that has gone through 3 successive wars now in recent years, has endured the effects of a blockade imposed on the region by Israel. And if you look at the 270,000 students that are studying in our schools alone, over 90% of them have never left the Gaza Strip in their lives. So we are dealing here with a community that is exposed to psychological pressure of a proportion that I have rarely seen in 25 years of working in conflict zones. This surely cannot be in the interest of anybody, of anyone's security in the region, but also not of the dignity of the people that we're dealing with. So, of course, when the announcement was made of a reduction to our funding, we spend about $1.2 billion a year. 300 million were reduced by the United States. That's obviously for any humanitarian organization a very significant piece. And that, if we cannot overcome it and address this shortfall, will have very significant consequences in terms of access to education, access to health care, and to emergency services.
Okay, I need to put to you some of the criticisms that certain parts of the Israeli media level at you and your organization, accusing you of having a curriculum in Gaza schools that is anti-Israeli, using schools, among other things, to stockpile rockets, and your ambulance has been used by Hamas gunmen. Now, these are things published in Israeli media. How would you respond to those accusations, and accusations like that?
Well, the first thing is UNRWA doesn't have any ambulances, so of course that must be something that is misrepresenting the reality. The second thing is, the cases during the Gaza conflict in which we found weapons components in our schools, I just want to remind here that they were found as part of inspections that UNRWA itself carried out. When we found these, we informed not only all the parties in the region, but we denounced it publicly. So actually, the world, and even yourself, can ask me the question because we informed the world. Because we will never accept that any party misuses, targets, hits, or affects the schools that we run, and indeed in the Gaza Strip during the 2014 war. On 6 occasions they were also hit by Israeli artillery, in which 44 people died and 207 were injured. So of course we work in one of the most polarized environments in the world. Our curriculum is based, since the Oslo Agreement, on the curriculum of the Palestinian Authority. Therefore we review it, and if we find in it that there are pages or chapters that contradict values of the United Nations, we discuss it with the Palestinian Ministry of Education, and we can also introduce complementary materials if that is necessary. We have a proven track record in that regard.
So life, as you've described it to us, a series of 3 conflicts, a blockade, a long-running blockade on Gaza, bringing shortages on almost everything. We've reported on the tunnels, we've reported how things are getting through. How would you describe life now in the Gaza Strip?
Well, our medical staff describes it as, an epidemic deterioration of psychosocial conditions. Because you can look at the destruction and reconstruction before and after the war in Gaza in 2014, but what you cannot do is actually scan the people. 138 of our students didn't survive the war. They died during the war. So in every UNRWA school in the Gaza Strip, there was a child that didn't return to the classroom. There were thousands who came back injured or had members of their families who were killed and others. And the point I'm trying to make here is that what is essential in the region is to recreate a political horizon, because here we are dealing with, the generation, the majority of Palestinians and of Palestine refugees are now just under the age of 25. That's over 50% of the population. This is the community that was born after the Oslo Peace Agreement. They were told by their own leadership and much of the world that if they embraced moderation, if they believed in politics and in a negotiated path, justice would be served or a solution would be found. And that has not been the case. And if we think of how unstable the Middle East is already, how many other measures do you need? Can we really afford to have 500,000 Palestine refugee boys and girls who are today in UNRWA schools no longer having access to education? I was recently at the Munich Security Conference. In every room, in every corridor, I was asked, Commissioner General, are you worried about further radicalization in the Middle East? Yes, I am, and I'm even more so if the financial shortfall that we face prevents students from continuing to learn.
So when you hear Donald Trump saying that, peace will come to the Middle East, and he's there sat alongside Benjamin Netanyahu after that meeting in Washington, they must sound like very hollow words to you.
No, look, there's nobody who is keener about peace and a solution than UNRWA and its staff. We have been in existence for 68 years. That was never the idea. But our ongoing existence is tied to the resolution, a just and lasting solution to be found. And that can only be done politically. So, whoever takes this responsibility seriously and delivers a solution should be recognized for doing so. But negotiations in such environments are hard work, and the Secretary General of the United Nations has made it very clear. There is no alternative to the two-state solution, he has said. There's no plan B. Mr. Guterres has been very clear about that. UNRWA was not mandated to play a political role. That's not our role. But we stand on the front line of observing every single day the human consequences of the unresolved political situation. And so nothing would be more important today than to actually bring about a political solution. I wish it, from the depth of my heart.
And the declaration by Trump that Jerusalem, he recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Clearly Netanyahu and many people in Israel saying that is true and right and just, and that's what should happen. But clearly, I think from your perspective, you'll be saying that this has brought problems which perhaps can't be resolved quickly by any political means.
Well, let me put it this way. What we observed is that it increased the level of anxiety clearly in part of the Middle East. It clearly increased the level of anxiety among Palestine refugees as well, and then added to the fact that UNRWA's financial situation worsened in very significant ways since last year. The United States, who has been consistently and historically the single largest donor to our agency, last year provided $364 million, and this year has contributed $60, and that's what they have announced for this year. Obviously, this is creating a lot of concerns in the region about what is going to happen. And I just want to say it also from a European perspective. We all remember in 2015 what happened when Syrian refugees and many others in the region felt that they could no longer find a solution or had no horizon close to home, that the solution had to be looked for somewhere else. And in very large numbers, they made their way to Europe. I say simply here that if Palestine refugees who have had the choice to remain in the region for a very long time don't see an ongoing provision of stable services in education for their children. Over 2 million Palestinians have graduated from our schools since the 1950s. It's a huge contribution to regional development and the preservation of opportunity and hope. And if healthcare and emergency services are no longer guaranteed, if this were my family, I would also make myself, ask myself, isn't there a solution or a future to be found for my children somewhere else? And I think, for Europe, it's important to remember, let us continue to invest in the region, politically first and foremost, and in the meantime, keep the human development focus that an organization like UNRWA brings very strongly on the table.
Pierre KRÄHENBÜHL, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Pierre KRÄHENBÜHL, the Commissioner General of UNRWA, the body which administers health, education, social services and much more to Palestinian families in Gaza and in other areas where they are refugees. Thank you so very much for joining us. We appreciate your time. Thank you.